To say that Cyberpunk Edgerunners is taking the world by storm would be putting things lightly. The Netflix anime series just made its debut, but already it's cracked the streamer's top 10 list as of this writing and has received acclaim from critics and fans alike. It's a night and day difference from the reception that Cyberpunk 2077, the game that inspired Edgerunners, received when it was first released. And Edgerunners' success alongside a few other titles is proving that Netflix should lean more into anime when adapting fan-favourite video games. The main reason comes from the fact that most anime studios have the freedom to tell an original story. Yet the studio may also look to the game for inspiration, but being a wholly original story means there's leeway to explore different themes and elements that the original game may have only briefly touched upon. This is true especially for Edgerunners, which takes a hard look at how capitalism grinds people down and even offers a shockingly dark take on the idea of implanting cybernetics into your body. David Martinez learns this the hard way when he has a piece of military-grade hardware called the Sandviston implanted into his body. The Sandviston grants David superhuman speed and reflexes, but he has to constantly inject medicine to stabilize himself. He also runs the risk of cyberpsychosis the longer he uses his implants. Now, while Cyberpunk 2077 featured many hallmarks of its titular genre, including mega corporations that oversee everything and digitally reliving someone's memories, it only scratched the surface of those themes. This was one of the major issues with William Gibson. Gibson, who wrote the novel Neuromancer, aka the book that served out like GTA skinned over with a generic 80s retro future. In contrast though, Edgerunners feels more in tune with the elements that make Cyberpunk appealing, even stopping to interrogate them at times. Edgerunners is also constructed in a way that appeals to viewers who haven't played Cyberpunk 2077. All you need to know going into the series is the basic concept, and the concept fuels a powerful story. And it still manages to include elements from the game that will please hardcore fans, such as the ever-present trauma team that leaps into action to treat the wounded. Netflix has taken this approach with its other video game anime, including Castlevania and Dota: Dragon's Blood, and the results have led to critical acclaim. Often the biggest worry when adapting a video game is, how do you approach it? What do you put in it? And what do you take out? Edgerunners isn't concerned with this, instead choosing to focus on its titular team and the struggles they go through. It's all the better for that decision in the end. That doesn't mean that the fans of the game are displeased with the results though, it's quite the contrary actually. Edgerunners has only managed to raise awareness about the game it's based on. Cyberpunk 2077 has seen an expansion in the players due to the debut of Edgerunners, and more will probably fire the game back up in the coming weeks. In a strange bit of synergy though, it also coincides with the release of the Phantom Liberty DLC, which sees the return of Keanu Reeves' Johnny Silverhand. It also helps that creators behind Cyberpunk 2077 have had a hand in shaping Edgerunners. Bartosz Stybor, who wrote multiple Cyberpunk comics for Dark Horse, serves as an executive producer on the series and helped shape the story for most of the episodes. And Mike Pondsmith, who created the original tabletop game, had nothing but high praise for the series. "They fucking nailed it," he gushed on Reddit. It's very rare for the creators of an IP to be involved in a project like this, to say nothing of praise that feels genuine. But Edgerunners, it appears to be the exception, and hopefully an example to those who want to bring a video game to the small screen. Another major element that made Edgerunners a must-watch was the animation studio behind David's story. Considering that Studio Trigger was animating Edgerunners, there was very little doubt that it was going to be bad. However, even by their standards, they blew it out of the park with this one. Studio Trigger, with their fluid and frenetic style, proved to be a perfect match for the tech-laced world of Cyberpunk 2077. Trigger's well known for popular anime including Kill la Kill and the supernatural film Promare. Even more recently, the studio provided animation services for a pair of shorts in the Visions anthology series. Netflix often teams up with studios to produce its anime series, and the results have been nothing short of spectacular. Studio Mir, best known for their work on Avatar: The Last Airbender and Young Justice Phantoms, provided the animation for Dota: Dragon's Blood. And Powerhouse struck gold with Castlevania, eventually striking a first-look deal with Netflix to produce more series for the streamer, including Masters of the Universe Revelation. Through their distinct anime art style, they imbue everything in Edgerunners with a keen memorability. Whether it's David's sharp shock of hair or his abrasive yellow jacket, Lucy's pastel locks or sleek silhouette, or even Becca's bright tattoos and unbalanced cybernetics, each person is distinct and memorable in a way that couldn't be achieved in-game. Animation allows Trigger to play with the human form without it being a distraction, which is perfect for Cyberpunk. Particular shots stuck with me because of how gorgeously they were framed and the details included in the frame. The look of this world is certainly heavily informed by what's come before, but also pushes to establish its own identity within it. Even just the main character's jacket becomes a visual signifier, an immediately recognizable piece of the character, as much as Garmina's glasses from Gurren Lagann. Studio Trigger is given a host of source material to draw from, but then also the freedom to build their own story up and over it. It's because of the unique lens that Trigger has been given that it can explore Night City in new and interesting ways. Specifically, the way that cybernetics are animated is mesmerizing. The special properties of each and how that's conveyed purely through how they're animated quickly becomes a highlight. Hack attacks become recognizable on sight, weaponized limbs fall back and forth with ease, full body mods become alien and frightening, and even the way that the UI from the game is translated to animation is just superb. Perhaps the highlight though is David's Sandevistan, which allows him to slow down time and react with hyper awareness and speed. Every time it's activated and you see David's past actions trailing behind him like an afterimage, you're starstruck. The Sandevistan has a weight and an impact with every use, mainly just from its animation. From the blood and gore to the wacky absurdist depictions of cyberpsychosis and net running, Cyberpunk Edgerunners uses its position as an anime to its benefit. It does things that the game couldn't do, depicting things that couldn't be achieved any other way. Edgerunners leans into its medium and turns the dials up to 11. It's a masterclass of 2D animation and maybe Trigger's best work to date. But perhaps the biggest element that makes Edgerunners stand out is its main characters. David undergoes some major changes throughout the events of Edgerunners. He loses his mother, he's kicked out of school, and he puts his body and mind through hell to become a cybernetic warrior. But he also finds a purpose while working with the Edgerunners and genuine love in the arms of Lucy. Though RPGs like Cyberpunk 2077 let the player customize their character, no two players will have the same experience since everyone brings their own experience to the table. David's journey provides a focal point for the audience to grasp onto, and his trials and tribulations make him just as much of a compelling character as Johnny Silverhand or 2077 protagonist V. Netflix has had some ups and downs with its video game adaptations. I mean, for every Castlevania there's a Resident Evil, but it may have cracked the code with Edgerunners. David's tale is one that will be familiar to stories with a down-and-out protagonist, but that just makes it easier to root for him. Seeing Night City through his eyes really illustrates just how dismal life can truly be there, even if it's painted as the ultimate utopia by some of those who live there. It's even easier to get into his head and root for him as the underdog than it was for protagonist V in the video game, because you know how worn down David is by everything from the very beginning. In fact, this is the story that should have been told from the start in the Cyberpunk video game. It's relatable, it's easy to digest, and you can feel for David as he's filled with anger, hurt, and confusion. Where does he go next? Who's responsible? Who's going to pay for the hurt he's endured? That's more powerful than any heist gone wrong, and a story that would have made the perfect playable set of missions. It's also what makes this series so watchable right off the bat. That and its impossibly cool vibes. It might be the coolest series Trigger has done yet. David and Lucy and their Edgerunner crew are a great cast that's fleshed out well for how short a time you spend with them. You grow attached to them and their relationships. You want to see them succeed and flourish in this world that will eventually seek to snuff them out. And Studio Trigger doesn't stop there. The entire world of Edgerunners is as pretty as it is voracious. Studio Trigger has done an excellent job of translating the peaks and valleys of Night City to animated splendor. From those sin-laced streets full of vice and disrepair to the unnaturally clean corporate buildings, from the Ripper Doctors to the mercenaries, they feel tangible and understandable instead of some unknowable fantasy entity. Studio Trigger also knocks the sound aspect out of the park too. Whether it be the music or the vocal performances, neither disappointed in Cyberpunk Edgerunners. Full disclosure though, any references to voice acting will be pointed at the English dub of Edgerunners. I've heard good things about the sub and even the dub in other languages, however the English dub will be the primary target of praise here. The voice acting chops chops of practically every character here are excellent. Zach Aguirre plays David as both this rebellious kid who truly believes that he's special and a broken man ruined by what Night City's put him through. Emilio as Lucy imbues the character with an edge and a softness that comes out at the perfect moments. The entire main Edgerunners crew all have their spin and essence that comes through beautifully through their voice work, especially the crazed, hot-headed performance of Alex Cazares as Becca, and serves to further your connection to these characters. They even have the one and only Giancarlo Esposito as the villainous Faraday. He plays the character with such a sinister reverence that it feels like he's smirking as he reads every single line. That type of energy and flair is present in all of Night City's denizens. Every piece of music or even the sound effects that ripple through the neon-soaked streets of Night City leaves its mark. The music always perfectly complements whatever's happening on screen. It manages to punch through scenes of discordance and lay low when it needs to be atmospheric. A special mention has to go to the choice of opening and ending songs too, both of which will fill you with hype and energy as an episode begins, or will mellow you out when you need to reflect on what just happened. While not something that you may consciously pick up as you're watching Cyberpunk Edgerunners, the soundscape of Night City will stick with you as well. I've had several of the songs stuck in my head since I watched it, and the performances of the main cast have me longing to go back for one more painful round. Without such a stellar performance of music, sound effects and voice work, Edgerunners wouldn't have been nearly as special as it is. Oh, and we're absolutely discussing that ending. If you haven't seen the series yet and just wanted the gist of how good the series is and clicked on the video, then the next few minutes we'll be discussing huge spoilers, and this is your cue to exit the video and watch the show ASAP. So that final fight was heartbreaking. Whether it was Kiwi's last phone call to Falco or David seeing visions of his mum encouraging him to continue fighting, everything about episode 10 is, pun intended, 10 out of 10. It isn't just David's struggle with his own grief and mental demeanour that's on full display in the finale, it's the entire main cast itself. Be it David, Becca, Falco or even Faraday, every death felt impactful. Heck, when the episode pans out to Becca getting crushed by Smasher, I was in disbelief. I was so sure that we, yes, we would defeat Adam and find a way for David to live happily ever after with Lucy and the crew. But Edgerunners truly broke away from the idea that the main cast gets any type of plot armor, and as much as I hate to say it, I love this show for precisely that. There was simply no way David could have made it out alive, and rather than make up some BS reason for David to live, we got a death that brings everything full circle. David was always content with the idea that it was fine for his dream to be someone else's. And so, with no more suppressants left, David buys some time for Falco and Lucy to leave, and for them to split the reward money. And in David's final act, he's killed ruthlessly by Smasher, and in turn becomes a legend that was eluded frequently throughout the series. As the finale closes out, Lucy heads to the moon alone for her tour, which of course was something her and David shared way back in the early parts of the season. By doing so, David had fulfilled his dream of his loved one fulfilling hers. And yet even still, Lucy's reaction is just like the viewers, a mixture of heartache and emptiness. And with that, Cyberpunk Edgerunners' bloody 10 episodes ended with an emotionally poignant and well-written ending that pretty much rounds out most of the big plot points. Although Smasher's still roaming around, David's arc comes full circle, protecting those he cares about in the ultimate act of selflessness. The show itself speaks about a lot of things, ranging from capitalism, violence, misogyny, and how all of this is disregarding humanity in general and within us. At the stage we're at, it's almost impossible to take on these mega corporations and bring any kind of change. What we can do, though, is stay beside our loved ones, fulfill their dreams along with the ones we have, and try to live a full life. All in all, Cyberpunk 2077 Edgerunners is a fantastic addition to the Cyberpunk universe. Its narrative is even more engaging than the original game in certain respects, with a protagonist it's easy to get behind and root for. It's rife with stylistic decisions that keep it one-to-one with its source material, from the language to the in-game core system, colours and fonts included. The animation is gorgeous, dynamic and colourful, just as in your face as Night City should be. It's a shame that it wasn't a playable story in-game, because this is the epitome of what Cyberpunk in-universe storytelling could be. And while I could nitpick aspects such as some reused shots here and there or some other tidbits which weren't my personal preference, I won't, because the story, it was so enjoyable that I just really don't care about the few and far between shortcomings it has. I know you'll laugh, You'll be hurt, you'll be in awe, perhaps all of those at the same time. The story is paced well, as it doesn't overstay its welcome. You'll likely want more by the time it ends, clawing at the potential that you could spend one more day in this world and with these people. And for that reason, the anime will get a Kaboom rating of a perfect 10. It's a superb piece of standalone content. It teaches you everything you need to know about this world, its people, and the rules that govern them. Whether you've played Cyberpunk 2077 or not, you see it from different eyes here. In episode 10, you'll become transfixed, and when it ends, you'll feel a longing that wasn't there before, a yearning to try and go back. And for a series to do that in such a short period of time, it really is some of the best animated content that's come out this year. And that's it for this review. Let me know what you thought of Studio Trigger's latest anime adaptation. I honestly can't see many people feeling any different to how I felt, but still, I'd love to know your thoughts in the comment section below. And of course, if you like what I had to say, please feel free to subscribe and check out my Patreon, which offers a range of cool perks. But as always, I'm Studio Kaboom, signing off, and be safe wherever you are.